Nuttycast.
Welcome back to Season 2 of the Nuttycast. In Season 2, we are going on location to various places all over the Philadelphia area. Mostly pretty highly concentrated in Chariton, Lansdale, and stuff, but all over Philadelphia area. And I'm really excited because I'm getting to interview some of my small business owning entrepreneurial friends, including today. Well, I don't know if I'd call us friends. That might be a bit of an overstatement.
Acquaintances.
A colleague. This is Michael Smith, owner of Dadsigner Services LLC.org, as well as the R5 Collab co-working space. Michael, why don't you tell us a little more about yourself and your businesses?
Yeah, I am Michael Smith. I have a couple businesses. One is the space that we're sitting in, R5 Collab. We're in
pretty sweet space, by the way.
Yeah, we're in the downstairs space, which just recently opened. It's called the Annex. It's a multi-use room, so you can rent it for conference room, small gathering, party. You could rent it to do photo studios. There's rolls of photo paper up here. So we also, the main business, which is upstairs, is renting out desks and offices to either remote people or freelance folks. And then my full-time thing is just started this year as well, which is doing graphic design subscription service. So you can sign up for a monthly fee and get unlimited graphic design services, one project at a time.
Pretty sweet. So tell us, with the R5 co-working space, when did you guys initially open?
Yeah, so I opened this space with a friend of mine named Greg back in 2019. We opened in February of 2019, right before the world.
February of 2020.
2020. I always get that wrong.
Close one.
I always get that one wrong. February 2020, right before the world shut down in March. So we were open for about a month before COVID hit, which was crazy. But we had some awesome members who helped us get through that whole time and sustained us through the drought of it all. And then, so now we're celebrating just over 4 years.
It's amazing
to
have tried to open at that time. When I think back to 2020, I'm really grateful that we had Nutty Novelties that started back in 2012, and I don't like to use the word established, but we were a little more established than a brand new business. And I felt like if I was trying to open in 2020 or even 2019 or 2018, I don't think we would have survived the pandemic. Obviously, farmers markets basically disappeared. Some of them tried to go to online pre-order only, which was really frustrating and hard to try and do business that way. But thankfully we were in some stores. That was the big thing. And we didn't get in stores right off the bat. It wasn't until 2015 or 16 that we started wholesaling at all. But as the farmers market started to go away, stores started going crazy. There was a rush on peanut butter at one point, which might not be quite as memorable to people as the rush on toilet paper and paper towels and stuff. But I certainly remember it, and I was like, oh, this, thank God for this. This is actually, sustaining us. But
I remember at that time, too, you were still using Square for your online site.
That's right.
And it was, right around Easter of 2020.
Yes, it was.
We were we need to push this new site live. Because we were, kind of waiting.
Oh,
we were waiting to see if this would go in 2 weeks, we thought it would. And you're I don't want to push the new site live. I don't want to ruin anything right now. And then it got to the point where you're we've got to push this thing live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Michael here redid our entire website. If you've ever bought anything on nuttynovelties.com or just been on that website for any reason at any time, you have Michael to thank. I have Michael to thank for it. I think it's a freaking masterpiece. And that's right. That was crazy timing with that. I think it was right around April 1st or something, 2020, that we went live with that. We just surpassed, I think it's 18,000 orders since that time. It's crazy.
That's insane.
It is insane.
18,000.
18,000. So yeah, thanks again.
Yeah.
Good job with that.
I just remember like that whole period of time was just so no one knew what was going to happen, and it was like you didn't want to make the wrong decision because
Oh my gosh.
you were already hurting
It was so stressful.
and you had no idea what was going to happen. And I remember you're like, "Hey, we got to do this," and I was like, "All right, let's go," and pushed it live. And I think that was probably a really big year for e-commerce for you.
Oh yeah.
That first year. Too.
It ended up like each like thankfully each year we've had has been our best year in business ever. Like year after year we've grown maybe 10-20% some years, and that included 2020. In 2020 we barely grew from 2019, but we did, and the website was a tremendous part of it, and then wholesale.
Yeah.
I don't miss it. I never want to go back to that. Oh man, I remember at one point, like I actually printed out like all the uncertainty and the scares and stuff. I actually printed out a form that said like, this person is driving to work to do an essential job of like food production in Telford, PA. Here's the address, and signed it. Just in case a police officer would pull somebody over on the street and be like, "Where are you going? Get back in your house." Which, thank God, of course, didn't happen. But that was a very real scare at one point. And I remember thinking too, like, peanut butter, like, is this essential? I guess it's food, right? Like, am I doing something wrong? Am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get my employees in trouble? Gosh, I hate him. Yeah. So my next question for you, and maybe we've already answered it with the pandemic, but what was the hardest part about turning your dreams into reality? Which that could be Dadsigner or this space or both.
Yeah, I think they're both like the same. And I think there's two aspects of it. One is just the fear of launching the thing, right? With R5, there was monetary risk, right? We signed a lease for 3 years. We had some idea if people were going to sign up, but we had no idea if that was going to sustain us long term and like all that kind of stuff. And with Dadsigner, similarly, I had been working in full-time roles my entire career. Someone else was responsible to pay make sure my paycheck was paid and provide insurance and all that kind of stuff. Launching out with Dadsigner, that was the first time that I had been completely reliant on my own income to be able to sustain our family, and having to figure out insurance outside of an employer was like all new. And so I think the first thing was like launching out. The second thing
and this was very recent.
This was January.
It was just January of this year.
Yeah. The second big thing is like, it's getting harder and harder to get attention from people. I worked in marketing for a really long time, but like all of these platforms are now pay to play. So you have to pay money in order to get your brand and your ideas and everything in front of people. And so, fortunately, I'm super thankful that both R5 and Dadsigner are sustainable right now. But it's this constant thought in my back of my head, like, especially with subscription businesses, which both are, if someone cancels or multiple people cancel, all of a sudden now you're like, you have no customers. And so you need to keep this healthy pipeline, even if not for growth purposes, like just having this pipeline to make sure that like if people cancel, there's other people in the background to like support that. And so that's one of the big challenges, is like not being annoying, but like continuing to talk about the business so that people are like, oh yeah, I saw you post about that like 30 times. I'm finally ready to talk to you about it. And figuring out what are the right platforms and like all that kind of stuff.
That's such a delicate balance, especially like our businesses are they're local businesses, and like we're dependent on our friends and community around us, and like it's a fine line to walk between like being annoying. Yeah. At the same time, you don't want to like never say anything. You don't want to. I don't know. I mean, for me, it's peanut butter. It's like a $5 item or whatever. Yeah. I'm like, hey, I got great peanut butter over here. But yeah, with you, it's bigger ticket than that, bigger investment. But it's still like you're doing yourself a disservice if you never mention it ever. But at the same time, you don't want to be that guy who it's like, anytime you come over to their house, they've got like the whiteboard out. They draw something that looks a lot like a pyramid, and you're like somewhere down the line on it.
Yeah, yeah. And like you'll like post something, and it will get very little engagement, and then someone will just reach out and be like, "Oh, I saw your post," and you're like, "You haven't engaged with any posts.
You didn't even like it
in like forever."
Yeah.
But then they'll reach out and they'll actually buy, and like I'd almost rather have 30 people that reach out and buy than 300 likes, because the likes they're helpful, but they're also worthless.
I know novelties. We will stoop to all levels of humiliation to get likes on Instagram.
I mean, it is helpful to keep your, but it doesn't. Like won't buy more nuts.
You don't feel like it's making you make additional purchases?
Liking your posts?
Yeah. I'm just messing.
I mean, it keeps
It's about attention for us.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I want,
It's absolutely
somebody like you.
necessary.
I'd like to think you're already sold. Hopefully you're already buying the product.
Cinnamon almond butter.
Cinnamon almond butter. Appreciate it. But we're hoping people will comment and share, and that the algorithms will work in our favor, so that people that have never heard of us all of a sudden will find us, and maybe they'll think about making a purchase. Yeah. Imagine that. Or if they just like watching me dance around in the squirrel suit, that's fine too.
Yeah. I would much rather, well, I've done this in the past. I bought nut butter for out of town people like I worked with or whatnot, and I send it to them, and then hopefully they get hooked. Yes. And then they tell their friends.
And then they tell their, and then
these are the things that you can't track. These are the things you can't track with double tapping on an image. Sorry, Daniel.
It's beautiful insight. All right, so next question is, and this might be kind of like cliche, but like, so you just started this new business in January. You've had the building going since 2020. So did you feel called, so to speak, called to entrepreneurship? Did you feel like you stumbled into it? Was this like an inevitability or circumstantial? What was that?
Yeah. I mean, I think some people are like, I always knew I'd be an entrepreneur. I don't know that I would say that, but at the same time, these businesses are like number 5 and 6 maybe. So right. Like as I came out of school, I did wedding and portrait photography because out of college, because that was like my major. And
photography?
Yeah. Or my photography was my minor.
Okay.
So I was doing weddings and portraits because I had a bunch of friends getting married, and it was like easy clients. And then my wife and I owned a fabric store in Skipback.
Stitchwell
Fabric.
What?
Don't look for it. It's no longer there.
Sorry.
And I think there's been a couple others. And like even all the way back in high school, I remember I had this little like business, if you could even call it that, called Mike's Motifs. And it was like logo design, like all these different things. And they were awful, absolutely awful, because I was in high school. But like...
I never knew about this.
Oh, yeah. And so like...
Mike's Motifs.
That's
so classic.
I even had like... my aunt had a embroidery machine, and she embroidered Mike's Motifs on like 2 polo shirts. I wish I should look for this.
Folks, you'll see it in the show notes. If we can get an image of that.
I gotta find it.
I just want to see it myself. If you can,
it's bad. There's a lot of drop shadows and bezel and emboss going on.
I can't wait to see it.
It's so bad. But yeah, so like some people would say like, oh, you're a serial entrepreneur. I'm like, I don't know. I just have tried to make things work or solve a problem that like I'm facing. So like R5. Why did we start R5? Well, because Greg and I were constantly at the local coffee shop, sitting there to be around other people and not just at our house, in our home office, or because like the kids were home and there's just like a draw to like be present with the kids when you're like in the same place as them. And so, what I found is, and like part of the reason I've become entrepreneurial is because I see a thing that I want to see in the world. I wanted a space like R5. I want good design and like to provide for my family. And so like these types of things, and like with the fabric store, Lindsay and I we she loves to sew. She loved this type of fabric. There was nothing in the area. If you want to see it, sometimes you just have to build it. And so, like, I think I don't really feel called, but I feel a responsibility that, like, if I really want a thing, I got to be the person that's going to do it.
Hmm. Yeah, so with these businesses that are no longer,
Uh-huh.
particularly I'm thinking of Stitchwell, I guess, because I need that pretty well.
Yeah.
But like, we have a friend who's big on failure.
Okay.
It's J.R. Briggs.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You knew
He
that, right?
wrote a book on it.
Yeah, he did. So actually, I don't. Would you call these businesses no longer exist? Would you call it a failure?
Yeah, I think some of them. I mean, I think often, like, when people talk about failure, they think about this like monstrosity and everything falls out from under you, and like it's this massive deconstruction. Was Stitchwell fabric failure? Yes, in the sense that we didn't get enough customers to sustain big enough growth to buy inventory at a regular pace to keep customers coming back. And so we kind of ran out of money. At the same time, my wife got pregnant and didn't, because she was the only employee and we didn't have anyone else like working there, it became a reality of like, well, I'm going to make a decision between, do I want the store or do I want to be a mom and be home with my kid? And because the store already wasn't doing well, it was an easy decision to be like, our lease is up. We're going to just offload as much of this inventory as possible and allow you to just be a mom. It wasn't bringing us any income, so it was a somewhat easy decision for her to like transition into that role because like we didn't lose anything. We gained a lot. We gained a new kid. We gained a lot of time, less stress. Think about the business. So in some
experience,
ton of experience, yeah.
Like, yeah.
So in some ways, yeah, it was a failure because it didn't make enough money to sustain itself. But in other ways, it was like a clear decision that like this is the best next step.
That's got to be the healthiest failure there ever could be. Was it emotional for you or Lindsay? Were there tears shed over Stitchwell? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, it was definitely the kids are out. It was definitely a hard thing to do to close because it was like we had talked about it. Oh, maybe when maybe after we have kids and they're out of the house, we would open this fabric store. Like it was always this lifelong dream, and then we did it when we were super young. And so like there was a grieving period of like losing the store, but there was great joy on the other side because we finally had our first kid.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I mean there was tears shed. Like another failure with wedding photography is we like screwed up majorly on a wedding and lost a bunch of photos, which was like that's a huge failure.
Oh man.
And that changed my relationship with weddings after that because I was just like, or shooting weddings, like shooting wedding photography. That is like, I had a really long time to recover from that because of just what that meant. And so yeah, it was. I think all of the businesses had a reason for closing down. Some of which were smaller failures. Some of them were emotional things that were hard to recover from.
Dare I suggest here in May of 2024 that you may have seen the Lord's leading in all of this to be where you are now, to have taken those steps that maybe you thought it was going this way, but it ended up not for various reasons. But
yeah,
you seem pretty happy and content and successful currently.
One of the things with failure, going to like JR's thing, is like you can either wallow in it or you can learn from it and see what it's provided you now. And so I feel like even in like the corporate world, what I learned there, I'm applying to what I'm doing now. The way that businesses want to grow, the way that they either treat their employees really well or kind of poorly, and like all those kinds of things. I've learned a lot from all those experiences as well. And so like when you leave a job, does it mean you failed, or does it just mean like that season has ended? Right. And so I think there's multiple things that are all and I was terrified to jump out and do this Dadsigner thing full time, and it's been great. People have supported it, including subscribing. And yeah, I'm still unlearning some things from my past of like, oh, you got to be at your desk from like 9 to 5, even though no one was like always expecting that of me. There was always this thing in the back of my head. So now, like, if I knock off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because I've completed all the work, I still have this thing in the back of my head, like, who needs to get a hold of me? Who's trying to reach out, and trying to unlearn some of that, and it's going to take some time.
Do you have any employees, by the way, with either of the businesses? Have you ever had employees?
Not personally.
Other than your wife, it's the 12?
I mean, it was her business, so technically I would have been her.
You were the employee.
Yeah. No, and I would prefer it that way. I don't mind contracting with like an accountant or a lawyer or different things like that, or even contracting out certain types of work. But I don't know if I want any full-time employees or part-time employees that are W-2'd or whatever.
I have 25.
Yeah, you're insane.
Jesse and I are full-time. Our driver, Neil, is full-time. That's it. Everybody else is part-time. Some are just doing even as little as 2 or 3 hours a week if they're part of our like Wednesday night crew, and some are doing 30 hours or more a week, especially this week. This week's I'm going to be talking to everybody this week. So I have like 25 employees. Pretty much everybody's part-time except for me and Jesse and our driver. And like I've always kind of had the mindset of like I'm just here to sell peanut butter. Like employees are kind of like a necessary evil, and
So you're saying your employees are evil?
a lot of them are. No, no. That's been my mindset, and to some degree, I still feel that way, especially when there's like tension or like if people are stressed out or if there's drama. Not that there ever is, but I think what I've come to realize is like we have such like it's even more than like a community. It's more like a family. Like I have like a second family in like these people that are working for me, helping to make peanut butter, helping to sell peanut butter, helping to take hilarious videos of us doing whatever. And like I guess I just didn't really anticipate like real relationships with some of these people, even when they are part-time. Like they're people that I've come to really care about, and I know like care about me and care about the business. And so I think what I've often seen as like a necessary evil, I see now as like being a real gift. It's something I'm very grateful for. Yeah. And also something that I need to seek to protect and not take for granted, and be like, you know what, I got a lot of very special people that happen to work here, and like I want this. I always tell them, I'm like, I don't have $1 million. I have flexibility. I want you to be doing, the things that you're good at and the things that you want to do to, my ability to give you those kind of roles. But yeah, just come to really.
When did you start having employees? I mean, you started in 2012.
Yeah, it was all me until like 2015-ish, maybe 16. Jesse would help me like during the summers when he was home from school, and then Cassie came on to help me in production, and actually she did some farmers markets too. And yeah, so I've had employees for almost like 10 years. It's insane.
But not 25.
Not 25. No, that's more recent.
So you've kind of like grown into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like 2012, you didn't start selling and 25 people were.
No, gosh, no. Nor would I have had any ability to handle that. In fact, when I lost my job and it was like just me in 2015, I was like, all right, first thing I need to do is make sure I have enough business to keep myself busy. Whether that's doing farmers markets, doing production, doing bookkeeping, like whatever it was, I need to be busy while like my wife is at work, because I was doing the production and everything at my house. Yeah. We were approved by the Department of Agriculture. Everything was legit. But like I was just home. I was either home or I was at a market or I was like delivering stuff, and I was like, I need to be working 40 hours a week at least, or I'm going to lose my mind. Yeah. It is not good for man to be alone. And yeah, and then the growth has surprised me more than anybody. And so like as we grew, I was like, oh man, I really need help on this production thing. I really need help with this like farmers market thing. And then by 2019, that's when Jesse graduated, college at Cedarville, and I offered him a full-time role with a partnership in the business, and it was the best thing that ever happened. I didn't realize how much I had been taking on my own plate at that time, and I had him come on, and I was like, "Oh, this is amazing!
Yeah.
Be able to separate things out." Yeah. All right, so we touched on this a little bit already, but like, I'm not trying to force my own faith or anything on anybody. Obviously, faith is a huge part of my life, and I know just from being acquaintances that faith is a big part of your life as well. But like, my biggest question, the one I'm kind of most excited about, is like, how does your faith inform your day-to-day life as an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
How would things be different if it wasn't for your faith?
Yeah, I think it impacts the way I try to communicate and interact with people. So like, one of the things that became, while 2020 was awful in the sense that that we owned a business that required physical presence to get value out of it.
That's well put.
Also reinforced for us and for, I think, other people that, like, you just mentioned, like, it's not good for man to be alone. It's not good for people to be alone. People are still, in 2024, encountering loneliness at home because they've gotten into such a routine to stay where they are. So they spend most of their time at home, whether it's work, if they're now remote, family, and like fun. Like, people have forgotten how to go out and like leave their house. And so one of the things that's really reinforced in me is like part of the reason that we started R5 was, yes, to solve this problem of giving office space and desks for people that didn't have it at home or didn't have an office to go into. But what I've continued to say is that it's about the community. So it's why we have lunches. We just went to El Limon yesterday, 6 or 7 of us, and had lunch together. It's why we have happy hours on Fridays. It's why we have communal spaces. It's why we built the annex. We open the garage door and we sit down here and we work together and we talk. And so I think there's a human connection element that I believe comes from being a person of faith, saying like, you know, in the original creation, why did God create humans? Well, because he wanted to have fellowship with people. And so if we're created in his image, then people need other people to have that fellowship as well. And so I think that's a big aspect, specifically with R5, around that community. And then with Dadsigner, I don't know exactly how my faith plays into it, but I think it allows me to be very true to who I am and what I believe, and not have to pander to whatever the latest news headline is pushing businesses to do. I don't have to have an opinion about it. I don't have to stay silent about someone else's opinion about it. I can just be me, and that is part of my brand. So I can release all that stuff that in the corporate world you kind of either have to stay silent about, or kind of choose that if you're going to say something that you're going to get skinned for it.
Yep.
So.
Well, Michael, thank you for being on with us, man. This was a blast. I want to say to anybody listening or watching us, Dadsigner is fantastic. We've used their stuff. Michael's been with us since the very, very beginning. When I think of you and the work you do, not so much you as a person, but the work that you do, like quality. Like when I see this space, it's just quality, it's intentionality, literally on the walls of this building, and everything you've done for Nutty Novelties. And you did the Broad Theater logo. You've done tons of like amazing stuff. So quick commercial for Dadsigner. They're awesome. R5 Co-working, Collab, Co-space.
R5collab.com.
There it is. R5collab.com. Fantastic place to work. I think about it every day. If I myself should be a client here, because it's so cool, and half my friends work here, especially with this space and the idea of hanging out and watching games together or like whatever. Like, it's got to be fantastic. So yeah, thanks for being on.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to say your quote. You have a quote about design.
Oh,
Design makes everything better.
all of life can be improved through intentional design.
That's so freaking good. Say it again.
All of life can be improved through intentional design.
Bang. And as always, stay nutty. We're supposed to say it together.
Okay. I'm ready now.
And as always,
Stay nutty.